We would get our second cups of coffee, we would lock eyes and just raise our cups across the room. and I love that. And I was thinking, man, if only my friends in eating disorder treatment could see me now, they'd be so jealous. Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
And welcome to another episode of Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where imperfect people have imperfect conversations. I'm Christina.
I always hate how I sound this, but I am Lauren.
I mean, you are Lauren.
I am. I just hate how I say it. It's like, I'm Lauren.
For me, the intro is kind of like the price of having a podcast. Like, it's something that no one wants to do or listen to, but we just got to get through it because it's part of the structure. But we're past that now. Good job.
Yeah.
We did it.
At least you get it out of the way first. It's done.
Lauren, where are you at this week?
Well, I'm okay. It is been another stressful week, as I imagine most will be for a while. But the good news, of course, is yesterday I got to pick up my car.
Yes! Air horns here.
Yes.
It's been, let's see, so I visited you in December, and that is when the incident occurred.
Yeah, so my theory, because I contacted the garage a couple weeks after that, and they said, like, oh, we can get it in March 20th, and I'm like, hey, what now? But my feeling is probably, like, once they looked at it and everything, they just, I don't know if things have gotten better about, like, how slow things come in as far as, like, car parts, so, they probably were just like, well, we got to make sure that we have everything here to do the work first.
That's true. There was a shortage for a while.
Like, I don't think they were just kind of like, yeah, we just don't want to do it for 2 months. So.
Remember when there was the toilet paper shortage?
Oh my God, we were just talking about that when my dad and family were here and how funny that was.
I was bulimic at the time.
Oh God.
And, there might have been a little laxative abuse sprinkled in there. So it was quite distressing to me to go through that, which is ridiculous to say because, of course, there were far bigger things to worry about in March of 2020.
Well, then I guess I was kind of lucky because, as we've talked about before, the last time I entered treatment was the day that we all went on lockdown. So when I came out, I was actually in a really good spot. So I was not in that situation.
I think, honestly, if you can, people, next time there's a global pandemic, you should get yourself into a psych ward, like, right before the crisis hits the general public.
If you can predict it, like, within a week before, then, yeah.
Check yourself in somewhere, and then you'll be fine. It's honestly highly effective.
Yeah, you'll just be able to work through that, and when you're ready for it, then you'll just be like, okay, I can go out into the crazy world now. I'm going to be so much more put together than everybody else who's just been dealing with it.
Yeah, look at us now.
Yeah.
Oh, so this doesn't really have anything to do with the treatment topic that we're going to be digging into today. Mm-hmm. But I'm really proud of myself because this week, as you know, I have had Wednesdays off and I've been trying to do things that are good for my mental health. Yeah. The big things on my list were get a dental insurance type thing, like a dental plan, and get a therapist. Those are like my two big things. So did I talk about the dental thing on the podcast?
You might have mentioned it.
It's boring. I won't talk about it. I got like a dental plan. I have an appointment in August.
That figures, but good.
Yeah, good. And then, so yesterday I was Googling how to get therapy without health insurance, and I found this website called the Open Path Psychotherapy Collective. I think I said that. Open Path, though. And basically you pay like a one-time membership of $65, and it lasts you however long you need their services, and you have access to this huge network of therapists that give you a discounted rate.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So like I paid that one-time fee, and now it's kind of like the same cost as I would be paying for my copay if I had health insurance.
Yeah.
And I emailed one therapist. She hasn't responded yet, and so.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm really proud of myself, and I just wanted to put that out there. If anyone is uninsured or poor as fuck or both, like me, it's a great resource. Open Path Psychotherapy Collective, not a sponsor.
Especially, I hope you'll have like more stories later, like how it is going really well, and we can suggest it to people.
Yeah, I need to be in therapy so badly.
Well, yes.
Like, I've started taking out my mental health issues on the people that are close to me, and it's just, I mean, yeah, even making this podcast lately has felt like stressful for me. And, part of it is probably all the crazy shit that's going on. It's a little bit unpredictable, uncertain, like we talked about in our uncertainty episode. Was that last week? No, it was 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, everything's uncertain, and so I fucking need a therapist. That's it. Anything else you want to talk about before we launch into our topic?
I don't think so. I think, I'm just, like continuing to navigate all of the bullshit that's going to get me where, what we're talking about.
Well, yeah, so you're going to treatment in a few weeks, knock on wood.
Yeah, I guess that is something today. I just kind of like had a mild freak out for a second because I've known for a while, not only that it was probably going to happen, but also that I had to put it off until after this family thing. So, I mean, it's been hanging over my head, for like a month and a half at this point. And so that entire time I've known like, okay, so probably, like nothing's going to happen until April.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's April, bitch. April 1st.
Exactly.
We're recording this on April Fool's Day.
That's why I'm saying in the like beginning, middle of February, when you can say to yourself like, okay, so it's probably going to happen in April, and I just know this, and it kind of seems far off, and then today it's like, oh fuck, it's going to happen this month. Okay,
it's okay. Breathe. Just breathe. I was in preparation for this recording going through old journals and playlists from when I was in treatment, and the first time I went to treatment was in 2010, and I was listening to a lot of that song "Breathe Me" by Sia. Are you familiar? Mm-hmm. We talked about...
As a lot of people were.
Yeah. I think it was on the first episode you were ever on. We were talking about like cheesy songs people use in their recovery montages on YouTube.
Yeah, like everyone uses. Yes!
Good times.
That's definitely one.
Throwback.
Not that I don't, like the song, but it does get a little old that everyone thinks like, this one speaks to only me.
I still love it. Low-key.
Yeah.
So
it is a good song.
Today we're talking about treatment stories, and the reason we are is because, Lauren is about to go to treatment, and we have had some listener feedback that we should talk about our experiences more. And that's basically it. I feel like we need to have more of a structure to this episode, because otherwise we're going to go on forever and be all over the place. First thing I want to establish is what our experience is with treatment in general. Like, how many times have you been? When was the first time you went? And then we can go from there.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was thinking, because I realized, like, first of all, I know that you have been to treatment for your eating disorder. I know you've been to treatment for alcoholism, and I know you've done each once. I don't know if you've done it multiple times. I don't know if you've done both at once. So
exactly.
I'm just kind of, I don't actually know. Yeah.
Yeah. And also we should probably say what we were there for, which leads me to our disclaimer segment of today's episode. We wanted to do a quick disclaimer because we'll be talking about a lot of sensitive topics on this episode in particular. We'll also be talking a lot about other people that we've met in treatment, I'm assuming. And it's really important for us, due to past incidents, that we want to be really sensitive to people's privacy. And so I'm going to try not to say anything like super private. But yeah, it's just, I wanted to say that. Anything you have to add?
Yeah, I don't plan to tell, like a personal story about like somebody else's like struggles or journey or anything like that.
Lastly, if you are in a spot right now where it triggers you to listen to eating disorder talk, maybe like vague descriptions of behaviors even, or we won't use numbers, but we're going to be talking about some real shit. We don't want to censor ourselves, but we also want to be careful not to trigger anyone. So maybe skip this one if you're in a bad place.
Hopefully not. I will say probably about 2/3 of my stories that I've been thinking are either like just insane or hilarious. But, there are some that are probably going to get into deep shit.
With that said, Lauren, what's your relationship with treatment?
So I, a little wrap up for anyone that hasn't heard this kind of stuff before. I have dealt with all sorts of like eating disorder behavior and stuff like that pretty much since I was, I mean, kind of since I was like 3 years old, but like that I can name it since I was probably like 11 or so.
Which is still pretty early for most people.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much it hit with junior high, I'd say. Big surprise.
And you're how old now? I feel like
42.
we're at an AA meeting. Hi, I'm Christina. I'm 30.
I know.
I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Christina.
I've never been to an AA meeting. Disclaimer.
I actually have been to one.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Okay, let's save it for another episode. This is the treatment episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, you're Lauren. You're 42.
Yes.
Continue.
But my first time ever going to any sort of treatment was when I was 35, because I was very good at hiding things. I'm very good at faking that things are okay. People will say, and I even like truly expected this at the time I had to go at 35, that I was going to find out like, oh, people in my life actually knew what was going on. They just hadn't said anything to me. No, I'm actually so good at it that I shocked all of my family.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this last week, the concept of being quote unquote high functioning. I think you're better at that than I am, because most of the time people knew that there was something going on with me.
Yeah. I think I'm better at that than most people, because like I said, most people have that same kind of story as you, that like people are like, yeah, we knew.
You're the minimization queen.
Right.
So you were 35 when you went to treatment for the first time, and what was that for?
So that was for the eating disorder. That is probably like the worst that it has ever gotten. So I imagine that's part of it too, is there was no ignoring. I mean, I don't like stories where people are like, I almost died, because everybody says that.
Well, okay, but I have stories like that too. And we have to clarify, like, when we say it's worse than it's ever been, we're not just talking about weight, even though, that is a factor. Right. And it doesn't just apply to eating disorders. But what do you, when you say it was worse than it ever was, what constitutes that for you? Like, how did you know that you really needed to go somewhere for help? Or was it not your choice?
I mean, it wasn't my idea, especially like having just gotten through life with at all different like spots. Then I did not think, like this would ever be just a thing that would be in my life. I didn't think it would be possible. I didn't think that you habitually think that you're not as bad.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of a coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. And you have to tell yourself you're not that bad in order to keep going sometimes.
Yeah. So of course, and especially then, because I had like no barometer to measure it against, I never had been. So I didn't know like what is the point where it's probably like this is needed, it had never been needed. And so I assumed that, but, like all the behaviors that I was doing had gotten to the worst that they were. I did not see that changing. And, when I look back, then it's things where it's like, oh, for the past like 3-4 weeks before I left, then I remember I lived in Chicago that time, and I had to take the L train to work. The hardest part of my day was when I had to get on the train to go to work or to get off, because usually it's like 3 flights of stairs that you have to walk up to get to the platform. Mm-hmm. And like by the time I knew I was going to treatment, then I remember like counting down, being, like, okay, like this is the day that I know is my last day at work, which means I have, 22 more times that I have to manage to like haul myself up these stairs.
Oh, wow.
And it's just like, yeah. And, when you look back and you're like, oh my God, if I was thinking like that, then yeah I was barely making it through a day.
Yeah. I remember thinking like, oh, this is the last night I can do drugs, or like, oh, this is the last night I can, binge and purge, whatever, insert behavior here.
Yep. And as I feel like is fairly common, then like that time I got out and immediately like went back to everything and found myself back within like 8 months.
Yeah.
that's actually seems to be a kind of common thing.
Amateur.
And yeah.
How to tell the amateurs from the professionals? Just kidding. Everyone's journey is unique, okay? Go as many times as you need to.
Right. But after that, then I did end up having to go back a couple other times, and those were much more spaced out. Like now it maybe on like the exact day I go, then it would be the 3-year anniversary since I've been out the last time. So
that's pretty good.
It's not like, Yeah, so it's not like I'm thinking that it's just like, oh, this is my life, like once a year at least I'm going to have to, like go back. I'm really trying not to. And so,
well, of
so I
course.
felt like having a long stretch like that is like thinking like, maybe I've got this. And then it just kind of, I don't know, all starts to implode on itself, and it's like, maybe I don't.
You could also look at it like you are sick with a chronic illness and you go 3 years without having to go to the doctor because you've been managing it. But now that it's obvious you need to go back to the doctor, it shouldn't be shameful. It's just like, unfortunately, part of having a chronic illness, potentially.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I look at it, at least.
Yeah, like cancer can go into remission for years.
Yeah, I was in remission for bulimia for like 6 years.
Nice. Yeah, tell your story.
So I was going to ask you, so this upcoming time is going to be number 5, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been to treatment 3 times, twice for my eating disorder, once for my alcohol use.
Okay.
The first time I was 17, my family was living in the Chicago area. My dad was pastor of a church there. And after being homeschooled my whole entire life, I had started going to this private Christian private Christian high school. And I just felt really out of place there. My depression got really bad. I was self-harming all the time. I started binging and purging my senior year of high school. I was on the basketball team and like wearing long sleeves so no one would see my scars. And like, it was just miserable. I am not an athletic person. I write about basketball a lot in my journals, which is why I'm bringing up basketball now. It's pretty funny. But yeah, I just was at the point where I was suicidal, and I don't remember a lot of it. Like, when I think about the times that I've had to go to treatment, it's usually like a nightmare. In my memory, it's a nightmare I had.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember a lot of details. I just remember the emotions I felt. Because usually when you're at the point where you have to go to treatment, you're not really in the best headspace.
Yeah.
And it's hard to be in the moment. And so I rely a lot on journals and stuff. And this podcast, honestly, because I can't remember shit. But yeah, I went and I was inpatient for 11 days. And then I went 9 years without needing, well, I probably needed it, but
yeah, 9 years. I was just kind of like 9 years that you managed to get through life without getting to that point.
And it's interesting because like the first time I went to treatment, it was for bulimia and self-harm and, suicidal ideation. The second time it was for my substance use, and it's like the second I started fixing the bulimia and the self-harm, like I started drinking. And, it got to the point where I needed to get treatment for that. I feel like that's kind of the trajectory I follow when I decide to make something my new favorite toxic coping mechanism.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about symptom swapping, and I know we had like a coping episode. We talked about this. Yeah, that is a common thing, sadly. So like you need something to cope.
Yeah, that experience was really different. Because it was, I was going through withdrawals, which you don't have withdrawals with bulimia. So,
right.
I'll tell stories about that later. Well, not in the same sense, at least.
I was going to say, I didn't shit for 15 days the first time I went to treatment.
Yeah, but that's not necessarily going to kill you.
No, but it sure is uncomfortable once you get to day 9 or 10.
I feel we'll be talking a lot about shit. You just reminded me of a really good shit story.
Nice.
From my most recent treatment stay, which was January of 2021. And that was for my bulimia. And like the first time I went, my parents forced me. Second time, my therapist forced me. Third time, I decided to go on my own. I raised the money to go on my own with crowdfunding. Yeah. And so my 3 experiences are pretty different, but I have a lot of stories from all of them.
All right.
What should we talk about first?
Well, how about I mean, mine are so specific that I feel like I should start with something like overarching in general, but we kind of just did that.
We could talk about our first time and like anything that jumps out from your very first time going to treatment, because everything is so alien and scary. Like I remember it was almost like I went to the office where my dad was at his computer, and I told him I was really depressed. And then we got in a car, and we drove through Chicago, and it was nighttime, and it was snowing. And we got to the hospital, and it was like 2 a.m. at that point, and I went to sleep. And I remember the energy was almost like a little kid waking up on Christmas morning. It was like, I don't know what to expect. But also, I hadn't had a lot of attention, like individual attention as a kid. And you can probably relate to this. So it's like when you're finally in treatment, there is something so validating about it. Like I am sick enough to deserve help and be noticed by people.
I agree. That was like what my first time there was like, but you also made me think of like getting there because, my first time I was 35 and I'd been living on my own and everything like that. So when I told my mom, and this one's kind of a funny story too, because I, had to tell all my family this for the first time, and I was really super nervous about that. So I used to, the therapist I was seeing then, I used to generally see her on Saturdays. So I asked my mom, can you make sure that you are around like this time on Saturday, and I'm going to give you a call, because I was going to do it at the therapist's office, and she was going to be on the call with me. And I just remember, like when you ask your mom, you say like, are you going to be around at this time? Can you make sure that you are, because I'm going to call you? Then
I would be fearing the worst.
The next couple days, that's what I was running through my head. I was just like, oh my God, she probably... My theory for her was that she thought that I was going to tell her that I was pregnant, didn't know whose it was, and didn't know what I was going to do.
Didn't your lawyer friends think that you had like committed a crime or something?
Well, yeah, I was going to get to that one too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did tell her, because she is very far away then, that she could offer if she's like, well, because the place I was going also was 5 hours away. So technically I could have taken an Amtrak there. And she was like, I will buy your plane ticket so that, you can take a plane there.
Oh, nice.
And that will be easier. And yeah, so that was kind of like her gift to me. But still,
it's an ordeal.
I remember the morning of, I have to pack for, I don't know, I'm told it's probably going to be a couple months. And again, I'm in Chicago at this time with no car, so I am reliant on public transportation. So I had to take, like a bus to a train to a bus so I could get to the airport. And I'm hauling my huge suitcase and my bags around. At the same time, I'm at the absolute worst I've ever been. And as just seems to happen for everybody, as we just mentioned, when you know this is happening, you seem to just go all out on like every bad behavior and coping mechanism you've been using like tenfold.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
as so one does.
I am in such awful shape at this point that I remember I was on the third floor and I had to stop and rest twice going down the stairs carrying my stuff because I just felt like my heart wasn't going to like keep up if I didn't.
Yeah, it's kind of a cosmic joke how you think about it. When I went to treatment for my alcohol abuse, I was like straight up suicidal. I told my therapist that I was suicidal, and I don't even know what happened. I was drunk the whole time. Like the last few sessions I had with him, I was drunk. And so I forget how exactly, but I made a plan with my therapist. I told him that I would go to the ER the following day and that I would call him from the ER to let him know. That's the agreement that we had. And so, of course, I'm like, as I leave his office, it's a beautiful day. I have a water bottle filled with vodka in my bag. Yeah. I had relapsed on self-harm a few days ago, and I had like stolen tools from a convenience store to do so, and I knew where they were. And I was like, I'm just going to go out with a bang. I'm going to drink, everything I have. I had some really dark thoughts. I'm not going to go into details, but I had this whole plan. But first I needed to get rid of my cat. Like I needed to make sure she was with someone safe.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had called my ex a few days prior to that and asked him to take her. And then he had told my parents, who told my therapist, I think. And so that's kind of how this all happened. But yeah, basically I found a girl from outpatient to take Ruby. She came and got Ruby and was like, hey, let me drop you off at the ER. And she refused to leave me alone, basically. And so that's how I ended up there. Was in the ER for 12 hours and then ended up at this random hospital in Tacoma, Washington. And I was alcoholic, but I was also bulimic at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you did talk about some of this recently, because I remember being kind of curious how those two go together.
I mean, it was such a, like...
for only one.
I had been in treatment for my bulimia before, but this treatment center was so different. It was more like more of a mental health crisis center to hold people who were in crisis for like a week or whatever until they were ready to get out. So there were people from every walk of life. There was like a high schooler who had overdosed on Tylenol. And then there was like a 70-year-old man who'd been, drinking every day for 40 years. Very different. And I was purging while I was there, which I kind of told on a previous episode.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Yeah.
I told them I was bulimic, but they like no one checked on me. We had private rooms, and so that was a weird treatment experience.
That is kind of strange.
But yeah, I told a few people. You were talking about who you told, and that's a good thing to talk about is like, how do you tell people when you do go to treatment? Do you have any more stories about telling people?
Actually, so I want to start because I did make a list, and I really
perfect.
probably shouldn't have because I part of me was like, I should just like go in and wing it because we'll just start talking and get onto other things. But also, I have a list of 6, potentially 7 stories I wanted to tell, and I've told none of them. So I feel like
that's perfect. I have a list. Dude, confession, I have an identical list.
Nice.
Let's just do that, or else we're gonna be on here for 2 hours.
Yeah, this was in one of the middle times that I went, and one thing in eating disorder treatment is there usually are like rules on things like gum, smoking, coffee, things like that. The one I'm going to hit is coffee.
Oh, I have a coffee story too.
And it is just that if you are lucky, and I always have been, you will go to a place that will actually allow you to have some coffee with caffeine in it.
Yep.
Both places that I went actually were both the same. Well, one allowed you 2 cups of coffee with caffeine. They had to be drank by noon. They had always like coffee out, and so like you just got like one of the staff to like pour you a cup. And
yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, it can be during the day.
Tell the normies why coffee is no in eating disorder treatment. I feel like that needs to be explained.
I mean, basically because most of them have been using and abusing caffeine to like suppress your appetite, to fill you up, all that kind of stuff.
Energy, poop.
Yep.
All the things.
Tons of reasons.
Okay, anyway, carry on.
Yeah. And so, but the one I'm going to tell you about is the other place I went. They also allowed you 2 cups of coffee with caffeine, but they had to be drank with breakfast.
Yeah, that's how mine was too.
Yeah, so you didn't get them until you were in the room having breakfast, and if you weren't finished, and so there are a lot of people slamming their last cup of coffee right before we leave the breakfast room. But one thing that me and one other girl discovered is the place that I was at, they must have been in the middle of switching their coffee cups. Like they probably had gotten like one type, and as those, started to break and stuff, they just started like ordering a different kind. But we realized that we were 99% certain that these old ones were bigger and held more. and you'd come into the room, and all of the coffee cups would just be, like on a counter, and you'd grab it, and you'd take it to your place if you wanted coffee. And so you had the cup, and her and I got wise to that, and we didn't tell anybody else, but we'd line up to be ready to like go up to the breakfast room, and we started kind of just like this silent pact with each other where we would both be at like the front of the door, like first thing. So as soon as we got the go ahead, then we would be like speed walking into the room. And if we saw 2, we'd always grab one for the other one. So,
oh my God. That's beautiful.
I know. We were just like this little sneaky duo that was like, we're going to get the big cups every day.
Yeah. For like an extra ounce of coffee.
Exactly.
It's really the little things that you hold on to because you don't have a lot of control in those kind of environments, and old habits die hard.
Yeah, so if you're just like, I am used to drinking, like 5 cups of coffee, and you are limiting me to 2, so I am going to get as much as I can out of those 2 damn cups, thank you.
Well, I was taking like caffeine pills in addition to drinking like several energy drinks a day. And so, yeah, I literally had the worst headaches when I went to treatment my 3rd time. Because, I was going through caffeine withdrawals. No one talks about that. Mm-hmm. When I went to treatment for alcohol, we could have unlimited coffee because it was not an eating disorder unit.
Right.
And I was just totally shook by this. So I would have several cups of just black coffee every morning. And the only other person who got a refill of his coffee was the 70-year-old man. And so he never talked to anyone. But every morning, we would get our second cups of coffee, we would lock eyes and just raise our cups across the room. And I love that. And I was thinking, man, if only my friends in eating disorder treatment could see me now, they'd be so jealous.
Right.
He also had a daughter my age that he eventually told me about. It was really cute.
Aw.
That's my coffee story. I mean, I have a
love
story
it.
about going to eating disorder treatment high on DXM and like sneaking coffee, but I kind of want to tell that story another day.
Okay, so my next one that I have two that I said are just like musts that I absolutely must tell.
Go for it.
This is from my first time, and I feel like this really shows, especially because my first time in treatment, like, it was really scary to get there. I, was in a really bad spot getting there, and of course, it was working through a lot of shit, so a lot of it was really tough and really sucked. But one thing that surprised me that was actually good is, especially when I get further into behaviors, one of my huge things is isolation.
Yeah, same.
Not only do I not make friends easily or anything like that in general, but I had completely shut myself off for like a year and a half at that point. And suddenly everybody's in the same spot as you. So it makes it easy for a lot of people to relate, and you form really close friendships usually because these people get it. And
yeah, one of my therapists used the term accelerated friendship to describe the relationships that occur in treatment. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. This is one of those stories where and this will tell you another thing that is kind of a little slice of treatment life. We had at this place at the end of the night, you had a med window. I mean, it basically was girl interrupted.
Oh, the med window.
Yeah.
My favorite place. The line for the med window. You had to get up super early if you wanted to be the first to get your meds and not miss breakfast.
I think at this place in the morning, they were setting them out, so they kind of had them for you while you were doing the regular morning stuff. But at night, yeah, it was just the line. And it seemed to take them always forever, and it's the last thing at night. So usually, by this point, you're like, God, I just want to go to sleep. And I gotta stand in this stupid line. So one night, the girl that actually became one of my absolute best friends to this day, she had recently discovered somewhere this old, a late 80s, early 90s toy, if people know, called Bop-It.
Oh my God, I love Bop-It. My siblings and I used to play with one.
Yeah, so there's some little plastic toy, and when they talk to you and there's things you're supposed to do, they say bop it, you're supposed to smack it, and it's pull it, and I don't know, there's something at the bottom that you're supposed to pull, and it makes a little noise, and and it gets faster, and you have to do what they say, and if you screw up,
you have to be very coordinated to play that game.
Yeah, so she discovered it, but she discovered a old Bop-It with barely hanging on dying batteries.
Is the voice all fucked up?
But yes, but she also, just became obsessed with being really good at this. And I just remember a night of standing at the med window while she is trying to, get it to work with these batteries. And it starts out going, and then as it gets slower and slower, then it's just Bop-It. And it probably, isn't registering. She's really speedy, so she gets it on time. But it's probably not registering because it's so slowed down. And I guess when you get one wrong, there's a screaming sound.
Oh yeah, the scream.
Yeah, normally you'd miss it and it just go ah. But at this point, she'd miss it, and then you just hear this most agonizing ah.
Can you turn your mic down a second for just a little bit? I just looked up and noticed all the bars were red. Oops.
Oh, I'm sorry,
listeners.
Yeah. I wondered about that. I tried to back up when I start doing that. But then she would get so upset that she missed it, so then she would scream too, so you'd just hear Bop it, pull it, bop it. And she's like, ah!
Oh my God. And everyone's just trying to sleep.
Actually, I think we were all on the floor laughing at that point. It was the funniest night, and it made standing in that stupid med window so much better.
So I don't really have a lot of stories that I wrote down because I can't remember much, but so I'm just going to be interjecting with little clips while you tell your big stories. But do you remember that game that was really popular for a while, Among Us?
Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay. See, I had never heard of it, but all of the kids on my unit when I was in treatment started playing it, and they forced me to play it, and so that's what we were doing till curfew.
See, I never actually got to play it because, I was not in a treatment setting, so I had no friends to play it with. Well, but I could see it working well there.
I mean, yeah, I didn't have any younger friends, and so I don't know. I feel like, is it a young person thing? I feel like it is.
I don't know.
Younger listeners will probably be like, yes, we know that thing, that no one talks about that anymore. It's done.
Well, no, I don't hear about it anymore. That's true. But I guess when it happened, I felt like maybe you were on like the higher end of the age group that seemed to be playing.
I was 29.
Exactly. That's why I'm like, I feel like you were in it. I feel like it was a 20 to 30-ish thing.
All right. Thank you for the validation.
You bet.
It was really hard for me to sleep when I was in treatment for my bulimia because I would have a really bad like acid reflux, and I thought I was having panic attacks, and I would have to get like EKGs done, and they would just be like, oh, it's acid reflux. And so, I spent a lot of nights just like hanging out in the hallways with other patients and nurses, and we would like make a lot of friendship bracelets.
Aww.
I did a lot of crafting in treatment. Most of my memories involve just like hanging out with people in the hallways or in the rooms waiting for group to start and just like making collages or coloring or friendship bracelets.
Yeah, I did the traditional. I did a lot of crocheting.
Oh yeah, I knew a woman who was a big crocheter. She crocheted a little cat toy for me before I left. Yeah.
I made actual blankets. In fact, you probably slept under one of them that I made.
Wait,
you stayed here.
Is it like brown?
The blue and brown one?
Yes,
Yep.
brown. I knew it was brown.
Yep.
Ooh, it was super toasty. It kept me warm in your freezing apartment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Remember, your heater was broken.
But it was no, the heater wasn't broken. It just couldn't.
It couldn't keep up.
Yeah, it was so cold. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I scraped my car.
Yeah, then everything went to shit, and here we are.
Yup.
You're about to go back to treatment.
That was the day that we got the warning that it's like, guess what? 2023 is going to suck. Here it comes.
It's still early. We'll see. I'm keeping my expectations realistic. What's your another story? Give us another.
Let's see. Oh, so I can tell another one that tells you one of the kind of things that happens. So for us, when you get like further along in an eating disorder treatment, they want you to do things like you start off just they assume like you don't know how to keep yourself safe. You don't know how to feed yourself. That's why you're here. Yeah. So, they start out basically kind of like telling you everything.
Which is fair.
Yeah. Nope, I think it's a totally logical way to do it, especially because if they kept doing it, I think that was not going to be helpful in the long run. But, like most places, like where I was at, realize, you are going to be going back to the real world and are going to have to do this on your own. So, they start doing things like you serve your own plate so you get an idea of what portions are versus, like we tell you what it is or things like that. And one of the things that we had was called client creation.
Client creation?
Yes. And
you're the client, I'm assuming.
Yes. And so once a week, what the dinner is there'd be maybe like 3 to 4 people that were in the group to do client creation. And those 3 to 4 people had to plan the menu. I mean, they planned it with the help of a dietitian.
For everyone?
Yes.
Oh, fuck that.
Yes.
I've never experienced anything like that.
Well, you had to plan the menu, and you had to go shopping for it. And I mean, since you are making this for everyone, then we would actually be in the facility's kitchen.
What?
So the cooks are helping a lot because obviously you're making this for a lot of people.
This is wild. I had no idea this happens.
Later, when we were in PHP, then you would do this same sort of thing, but you would do it, like the group would do it off-site usually at one of the PHP person's apartments or something like that.
What?
Well,
what is this? To the bone?
That one I think makes more sense because then it's just a group, cooking for your group.
But that feels like a HIPAA violation. Going to a staff member's apartment?
No, going to one of the
oh!
Yeah, because, they have, like, PHP apartments for the, some of the people that, like, aren't local in PHP.
We're on the same page now.
Okay.
I'm only slightly less
I see why yours sounded so crazy. But, yeah, the one that happened first that I do agree is a little more insane is when you are cooking for everyone and you're in the kitchen.
Yeah, let's not detract from that.
So my first time doing this, the experience was nuts because I was with two other people, and it just so happened that, the day before you do the grocery shopping with a dietitian, she takes you out. And I think we had just all been in like particularly bad spots. So this looked like a recipe for disaster. I remember in the grocery store, my one friend was there, and she had just had, I don't know if she'd had like a particular hard therapy session. I think she might have had one like on the phone with her parents or something like that. So she was refusing to speak at this point.
Oh, great.
The other girl was pretty much just like overthinking everything. I mean, like she went into like hyperactive mode in the grocery store. Like, is this okay? Am I doing this right? Is this okay? Do I need to do this right? Do I need to get this? Should we get this? What am I doing? Am I doing this okay? And my friend is refusing to speak. I pretty much had a panic attack in the grocery store that I wasn't expecting and was just pretty much like catatonic. I remember I was dealing with it by doing something that I used to do on car trips to like make them pass is any text that I'd find, I'd start reading it backwards in my head. So I'm walking around the grocery store like reading every text that I see backwards. My friend is not speaking. The other girl is just, like chattering a mile a minute about like like every food item and if it's okay.
Are you being chaperoned?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I said, a dietitian takes you out.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
To do all this. Yeah.
I'm bad at focusing sometimes.
That's okay. So by the grocery shopping trip, this looked like a total recipe for disaster, and I was just like, this is going to go so badly.
No pun intended. A recipe for disaster.
Yeah. But somehow we pulled ourselves together, I guess, by the day we had to actually do this. And as we were doing it, I don't remember what our dinner was. I think it was some kind of like curry dish because we'd originally thought that because we felt like there wasn't enough spice in our menu. And
that's another thing that people kind of don't want you to have too much of in treatment.
Yeah,
they limit the condiments, which I am all about condiments. So
same.
Everything is so bland. They only give you like one salt packet.
Yeah, you get like a little tiny package of black pepper or something like that.
So was it like that when you were cooking too? They limited like what you could use and stuff?
They probably did. I don't really remember that. But yeah, so we were cooking and we had to have a dessert and we decided to make chocolate dipped strawberries.
Sounds nice.
Oh, and we had a salad that I had like inspired by one I'd had at a past work Christmas party. So our salad looks fancy. We're making chocolate dipped strawberries and we suddenly got it in our heads that we were going to make our meal be a wedding.
All right.
We got into the dining room, like in between while we were cooking so that we could decorate. We stole everything that we could find from the art room that we felt, like would make it like streamers and sparkles and things like that. We made place cards and we took our favorite staff member, because there's always a staff member sitting at each table to make sure that you aren't doing anything, like slipping food down your pants. And so,
yeah, that's a thing.
And so we found our favorite staff member and we dubbed her the bride. And for some reason, there was like a stuffed Captain Hook figure that we had, and we made him the groom.
That is adorable. I love this.
And we had the idea to decorate it, that we could like do kind of like streamer type things, and of course it would be white. We all took turns asking to use the bathroom, and we each snuck a roll of toilet paper out of the bathroom, and we like decorated all over. And yeah, so then when everybody came into that client creation, then we had the table set and everything, and we got one of the people's iPods and we started like playing the wedding march when they all came in. So I feel like ours was epic.
That sounds amazing. Honestly, you need distractions through meal times. So like we would play a lot of like word games and stuff.
Yes, table games.
Yeah, table games are a big thing. We had a staff member who would always read our horoscopes at breakfast.
We did too.
Yeah.
At the second place I went. Yeah.
Yeah, little things like that. So when I went to treatment, it was during COVID, so we couldn't go out to do errands and stuff. But once a week when I was in PHP, everyone would vote on a restaurant to order in from. And then you had to select your meal, and then the staff member would go pick it up, and everyone would eat it together.
Oh my God, that actually sounds stressful.
It was the most stressful part of treatment, Lauren. The vote was the worst part. Because, of course, sometimes things can get a little petty in treatment, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, like when I was there often, then, like we were able to just go on regular weekend outings, and I remember we'd vote about that. And they're not food related. They're just like, are we going to go to a movie, or are we going to go to the zoo or something? And everybody, yeah.
Some people, of course, would be very uncomfortable with a food choice. And then, they would feel angry that everyone else voted for it, and then that would be a whole thing. I remember, my very last week there, we finally were going to order in from this Mediterranean place, and I was so excited, and then I left the day before. Yeah. I want to talk about some of the people I've met in treatment.
Yeah, great.
Like you were talking about the people you meet, there's a barrier that's just not there. That's like the barrier that you put up with people in the real world. It's just not there in many cases. Like none of you want to be there, but you're there for probably similar reasons. And it's like you're in a conspiracy together, Yeah. And that can be good or bad, depending.
Yeah.
I'm sure we both have stories of ways that it wasn't good. But I put out on Instagram a message. I was just like, hey, treatment buds, what's your favorite memory from our time together? And I said, I'm working on this episode. I only heard from one person, but I wanted to read their comment because it's just,
Love it.
Yeah. So this is from Teddy. Shout out Teddy. When we were looking through all of the magazines and created a mini collaging station, making some really rad collages. Also the day when we're outside on our smoke break and we were talking about gender and sexuality and being open and vulnerable with each other. Also, when you created all those cute little graphic design quotes and memes and covered your door with them. There's too many great ones, but those are definitely the top. I miss you. And that is just an example of like the kind of interactions that I still to this day have with my treatment friends. I mean, of course, there's a few over the years that I've kept in touch with, but the reality is most of them end up like falling away after a while.
Yeah.
And that's a whole episode we can have is like treatment friendships.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about the collaging station, and I wanted to talk about the smoke break conversations.
I was thinking of that too. I was just like, we should try getting to
Well, I mean,
porch.
My example is a collaging station, but what I really want to talk about is like art. And if we're talking on a broader scale, just embracing your inner child in treatment. Because like both of us have had to be really responsible from a really early age. And so we never really got a childhood in some cases. And so being in treatment, every time I've gone, it's the only time that I just unabashedly create art for the sake of creating art and not because I feel like I should be making money from it or because I have to prove something. It's just like I'm just making art because I want to make art. And so I had never made a collage before in my life prior to January 2021. Teddy was actually the one to introduce me to it. And it was like my thing. Like some people have a thing in treatment. Like you were talking about crocheting.
Yes.
I was like the collage girl. Like I would go around with a tote bag full of scraps of paper and glue sticks. And by the time I left, I had made a collage for everyone on the wing. And then when I left treatment, I kept doing it. And when I moved to Virginia, I started selling my collages at a local shop here.
Oh, wow.
So like that turned into something that really helps me and brings me a lot of enjoyment.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't talk about it a lot because I'm insecure about my art and,
the best quote that I ever saw was, like someone else saying, "What do you do with your art?" And the person responds, "I stare at it until I hate it."
How do you feel about your podcast? Oh, I listen to it until I hate it.
Yep. That's what I thought of. I was like, yeah, that's everything that I do.
Oh, our listener, Janai?
Yeah.
They sent me a meme while I was in treatment that I ended up printing and posting on my door. That was one of the ones Teddy was describing. What was it? You don't have to be a happy cowboy. It's okay you don't have to be a strong cowboy. Just be a sad cowboy.
Aww,
and it was like a little mouse, a little crying mouse in a cowboy hat. I don't know. Smoke break conversations.
Yes.
So one of my first conversations that I remember having with you, Lauren, is when we were on Peach. We were chatting in Peach, and I forget if you posted it to your feed or if it was in a private message, but you were talking about smuggling a vape into treatment.
Yes.
Why don't you tell that story?
So, the first place that I went, you were allowed to vape. You were allowed to smoke cigarettes as well. They figured that everything that they were making you give up, I guess, was hard enough, and they weren't going to police that one. The second place that I went said if their goal was to try and get people healthy, they were not going to allow any of that, smoking cigarettes or vapes or anything like that, because their whole point is trying to get your body healthy. So
I hate that word, healthy.
None of that was, I know.
I feel like it has a lot of twisted connotations.
I feel like that's also a whole nother episode.
Oh,
topic.
totally.
But so knowing that, and I already knew because I actually had a friend that was in this facility at the time, and I had been visiting her sometimes. So when I visited her, because she was also somebody, that was pretty strong on the vape train, and so I would sneak her in some stuff sometimes.
Nice.
And if she was like, oh, I ran out of vape juice, then I was like, okay, I'll bring it in my purse.
I got you.
Yeah. But yeah, so knowing that they didn't allow anything like that, then I devised where I had two like disposable stick vapes that I wore like double sports bras, and and so that they wouldn't like poke through or anything, and I basically stuck one under each boob, and also had kind of like a loose sweatshirt jacket like zipped up over them. And yeah, just like went through. I mean, I didn't think that they will check your luggage and things like that, but I'd never had any experience at an eating disorder facility where they like strip search you or anything like that. The psych ward is a whole different story, but
yeah.
But there, I knew like at the very most I would expect someone might say like, do you have anything in your pockets? But no one's gonna say, do you have two vapes in your bra? So
you never know.
So yeah, and it was just like, I thought that I would have a chance at some point, usually like when they give you a chance to like unpack and you have a little time alone, but it just happened how the day went that I really didn't. So I literally from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m, then I just like went around the whole time with two vapes under my boobs.
I love that.
I had them.
Iconic.
Yes.
I didn't know that we were allowed to vape at the treatment center I went to my third time, and so I didn't bring any of my, 5 vapes. And then when I got there, they put me on nicotine patches, and so, of course, I bought a vape online and started going out with my buds, and we had a little smoking group that would go out 3 times a day or twice a day, whenever it was, and we would just, for 15 minutes, talk. We'd break off into pairs and talk. Sometimes we would stay a group. Sometimes we'd randomly start shouting and waving at cars. There were these 2 teenage girls, super, super sweet. I'm still Instagram friends with them. They started screaming at cars, honk for recovery. And they got us to do it too. But yeah, so when I was at treatment the third time, I was working on my eating disorder, sure. But I was also making a lot of big decisions about what I was going to do when I got out. Not only with my career and moving and stuff, because that was when I decided to move to Virginia from Seattle where I was living. But I started, questioning my sexuality there. And I haven't talked about this at all on the podcast because it's still something that I'm still figuring it out, and I don't think I owe anyone a label or anything like that. Not that I have one. But prior to that, I had just always assumed I was just straight, and part of it was the culture I grew up in. Part of it was just I had so much going on. I had never prioritized relationships or love or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so the reason I started even thinking about this stuff is in part, there was an LGBTQ plus group, and I started going to that, and it was just the most welcoming group of people I've ever met. It was my favorite group there, hands down, and I didn't even consider myself as part of that community. And they just welcomed me with open arms, and Teddy in particular had so many great conversations with me. And that's when I think about my treatment stories, I know we talked over text that we wanted to share a lot of like funny stories.
Yeah.
But honestly, I just have so many fond memories of like good conversations with people, because I feel like those kind of conversations are very hard to have in real life. Like, it's hard to carve out the time to have a meaningful conversation.
Yeah, I'm kind of jealous that you had a group like that there, because I will say, and like this is also something that I haven't really talked about, is probably around the time that I went for the first time, I had already been questioning. A lot of times I have felt like I might be asexual, but the problem is this was kind of like coming up while like all of the eating disorder behaviors were developing to like their absolute like pinnacle worst. So
I mean, that is a symptom of eating disorders, is a lack of libido.
So that's the thing, is it's always been hard to tell. Is I'm just always been kind of confused. Like, is that, when I think about it, then it seems like, yeah, like everything in my past life kind of could suggest this, but also am I just thinking this because like I'm doing all of this to basically like shut everything down, so of course I have no sexual feelings right now. So yeah, it is kind of confusing, and I wish I had a group like that.
Dude, yeah, I can relate so much, and I can already tell, maybe we'll do an episode on this someday. It's still something I'm kind of uncomfortable talking about, to be completely honest. Mm-hmm. Wow, I didn't expect the conversation to go there. Do you have another story to wrap us up with, maybe?
Actually, I have two, because
okay.
I did have one that, I wanted to tell like kind of the serious side, and then I didn't want to like end on that. Perfect. Yeah. So, this was also the first time that I was in treatment, and I had a friend, and like live journal stuff I know has come up on here sometimes, and so that's what she was. She had been a live journal friend. She was one, unlike, favorite listener Vicky, she was one that I never actually had met in real life, but she had like a very troubling time. She had dealt with eating disorders as well, someone where it had gotten like super serious. She also dealt with drug addiction a ton, and, had overdosed multiple times, been in really terrible shape, had horrible depression to the point where sometimes she'd be doing okay on maybe like the drug side, but knew she could get it, and she'd like purposefully try and overdose on drugs to kill herself. Mm. And so she just had a lot of struggles, but at the same time, like when she was on, like I said, I talked to her on the phone a couple times. She'd recorded like audio entries and posted them, so I still felt like I knew her, and she just would be like so vibrant and smart and everything when she was on. But I saw, when I was in treatment, a message from a live journal friend who I had added on mine but didn't really know it was a very, very close friend of hers. And I saw that I had a message from that friend, and I knew when I saw it, I was just like, I know what this person is going to tell me. And it was at a point, like, I had to go to a group, and I was just like, I can't read this right now. Like, if I don't actually read the message from her, then I don't know for sure. Yeah. And so I finally, like, got a chance, and I said, like, okay, it's gonna kill me not to know. And it happened to be, like 15 minutes before dinner is when I get the chance.
Of course.
Before lunch, sorry. And I read, and it was, the friend is saying like, hey, like, I know we don't really know each other that well, but I know that you are good friends with this person. So I just, wanted to make sure that it wasn't a surprise, and that you knew that, like she did commit suicide like last week, and I'm devastated, of course, and I just, like felt as someone that I knew was a good friend of hers that you should know. And that was really, I think, the first time that someone, like at my age, in my kind of walk of life, that I knew, that I felt close to in any way, I found out, had killed themselves. And I remember I walked out onto the porch, and I just curled up in a ball, because for some reason the only thing that was giving me comfort was the concrete on the porch felt very cold, and I would just, like wanted to like flatten as much of my body on that as I could. And someone comes out when it's lunchtime, you know, and is like, hey, Lauren, are you going to come in the dining room? And, but I, you know, and I explained what happened. She's like, okay, you know, like you can have another minute and, you know, like that's fine. And they usually also give you like time to finish your meals. And she's like, we won't start your time until you get in. So I came in like 10 minutes late, and I remember sitting at the table, not looking at anybody. I will remember to this day that it was grilled cheese and tomato soup, and which normally I enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, and just like looking at it because, and I think I, you know, like tried a couple times. It was just like, felt like I physically like could not even like get my throat to swallow.
Yeah.
And the turning point at one point, you know, because this person was just so like, tell it how it is, and was really funny and everything. And I just suddenly like could hear her there just being like, you know, if you don't eat your fucking lunch, it's not going to make me any less dead. So,
oh my God.
Exactly something that she would have said. And so yeah, I felt like at that point is where I just kind of realized that this isn't all about you. Like, you can't make everything in your life be a reason. Like, well, this is an excuse why I don't have to do what I have to do. So basically at that point, I remember I just like ate the lunch like a robot, and then as soon as I was done, I just like put my head down on the table and did not talk to anybody else for the rest of that meal. But it was just like, I did it.
Wow.
So I feel, yeah, it was just like, that's always kind of something that I remember to sort of show, like I said, that it's like, you can't make everything be like such a personal tragedy that, you know, it gives you an excuse not to have to like do the work.
Yeah, I mean, and everyone there is in the same boat, more or less, and you're all having to do the work. And I think treatment works best if you utilize the environment and you utilize the relationships you make there to work for you for your recovery. Because sometimes you can go and, like, I've seen people do this, and I've done this myself, where I go and I kind of get too comfortable. Mm-hmm. You know, and I get too invested in everyone's personal lives to the point where it detracts from my own recovery. It really works when you help each other. And I just love that story. Like, the grilled cheese makes it like that much sadder to me. But I think it's very touching that experience kind of pushed you forward to do the work for her.
Yeah, it always, I don't know, it wasn't, you know, like a big turning point, but it was kind of like a moment, I felt like, where I noticed like there would be people that would take advantage of things like that. You know, like that's a pretty serious thing, and I'd understand someone saying like, I don't feel like I can eat my meal immediately.
Well,
after
but there were
this.
people like that, and I have done that. You know, everyone's at a different place.
Yeah, but I was thinking like some people, you know, like maybe they would exaggerate like some things because they could get away with it, you know, like on maybe like a smaller scale, saying like, my mom called me before this and it was a hard conversation. I just can't eat because of that.
Yeah, you just gotta have good intentions, I guess. Like,
you know, and I'm not saying that like that's not an excuse for someone if it genuinely is. I'm just saying that like someone could use that knowing like it's not really so bad that I'm making it out to be. I'm using that to, yeah. You
can cheat any system. we figure that out. Although I've gotta say, like, I also don't have a lot of crazy stories because I'm a model client. If you will. I follow all the rules generally. I eat my meals. I don't really cause a ruckus.
Same, which is why, you know, I've been talking with my therapist, outpatient therapist and dietitian, and that is kind of one of the goals going in this time, is to not just do things so that everybody likes me.
Good.
And I do everything right.
I support it.
Yeah.
I should say we support it.
Yes. Because, I mean, you know, I've done that all the past times, and look where it's gotten me.
Exactly. All right, what's your final story? Your final lighthearted story?
This one is also a meal story.
Perfect.
This is another thing that they did once a week, is we did a thing on Sundays. They called it Chef's Choice. Maybe this was to prepare you for something unexpected. It was like you did not know what you were getting.
Was this the same treatment center that had you plan the meals? Okay.
Yes. So you do your meal planning every week, but this was one that was not on there, so you don't know what you're getting. It's just the cooks in the kitchen decide what the meal is going to be, and you sit down and you find out what it is.
I guess you don't have a choice.
Exactly. Oh
my God.
You, animals.
Are they killing each other back there?
No. Meatball had the audacity to think that he might jump in my lap when Pico was already sitting in it.
Well, it's okay. While you started telling that tragic story about your friend, there started to be like thunderclaps in the background over here. It's just started raining.
Okay.
Okay, so chef's choice.
Yes. So our chef's choice, all I know is part of it is a salad, and this salad apparently was going to have fennel. I've heard of fennel being on, like frou-frou salads and things like this.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's supposed to be usually, like I've heard, shaved fennel.
Yeah.
This was served as chunks. You were required to have, I believe, 3 of these chunks of fennel on your salad.
Fennel's the stuff that's in like licorice, right?
It has a similar taste.
Yeah. I say that because Brett and I got a fennel-flavored toothpaste from Trader Joe's, and it was awful.
And see, I don't actually mind black licorice, or black licorice is kind of weird, but I like black jelly beans.
You do you.
Yeah,
I'll disagree, but you do you.
No, I know a lot of people don't. But either way, I think it's an odd taste on a salad, and the fact that, it was this like chunk of it.
Yeah.
It was disgusting. And and we asked people because we thought like that's really weird, and they confirmed if you don't eat the fennel, then yes, that's considered a non-compliance for that meal, or you'll have to supplement, or we'll consider you didn't finish or something like that. So I was so upset about this. At the end, they had like sheets that you had to fill out that basically, were like, basically you had to say like, if I struggled with this, usually you went around and everybody said something. So this time I remember it was like, I did it, but I filled out this like epic one about making the entire thing about fennel, where they would be like, the part that had me the most anxious about the meal was, and I'd be like, when I knew I was going to have to eat the fennel. And then there'd be like, the best part of the meal was when I was done with the fennel and knew I didn't have to eat it anymore. And, like an additional thoughts thing, I wrote so much I had to like flip on the other side of the paper, and I shared this, I know, with my table, who was, just like dying, where I am actually a person who, unlike the majority of the population, does not mind the flavor of black licorice, but that doesn't mean that I would put Good and Plenty's on a salad.
Oh my God. Scathing review.
Exactly. And so my favorite part is that a staff member informed me a couple of days later I remember there were some other things that people were basically kind of getting facility rules named after them pretty much. It was like something would happen, and it was because of someone that they'd make this rule, and everyone was always all proud of that.
Nice.
And a staff member came and told me, they were like, just so you know, we made it a rule here that the kitchen is not allowed to serve fennel anymore.
Legend.
So proud, told everybody. I was like, you guys, the Lauren rule is now that you will never be served fennel again.
I can't think of a story to top that, so I think that's a perfect place to end it. Fucking perfect. I felt
like that was the perfect ending. Yeah.
But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed our treatment stories episode. Tell us what you think by following us on Instagram at Pickles and Vodka Podcast.
Yeah, if you have any fun stories to share, please do. I've had a great time with this.
Yeah. And I guess we'll give you an update next week. It's supposed to be a poll episode, but I don't know if we'll do one.
Yeah, I mean, next week might, for all I know, be my final episode before I, take a break.
So we can just make the next episode be about that, honestly.
If it's not the next episode, it'll be the one after, but either way I should know.
What if we ask people to send in thoughts and prayers? No, what if we ask people to send in just like encouragement or tips for you?
Oh, that'd be sweet.
If y'all can think of anything, send it our way.
Yeah, or anything, yeah. Funny that I can think about. I don't know.
Stay tuned. Anyway, until next week, goodbye.
Bye.